it's past. Do you understand? Since then, that's in the past. Okay? Before,
Sinเป็นพาส
perfect. Before something happened, and then since, after. So you have a past and a future. And in these exercises, it's just a matter of putting the past or the present. And you have to figure out where this person is. Or I'm meeting friends that I haven't seen for a long time. I haven't seen them, but I know them. So it's past tense. I will try to think of more clever examples for next time we meet, to make it clearer, more clear-cut. And now I want to start talking about what we're going to be reading tomorrow, which is Titanic. We're going to start to read Titanic. And the whole sense of Titanic is the differences in 1912, which is when the Titanic happened. It happened in April the 12th, 1912. And in 1912, there were very big differences between the classes. If you think about the Titanic and the people in the Titanic, you had first class, was very, very extreme. They had beautiful linens, they had private cabins, they had their own chaise lounge, they had silver that they used, they had beautiful plates that were engraved with the Titanic, they had gold on the plates, they had linen napkins. The people in steerage were herded like cattle almost. They did not have all the little beautiful things that the first class had. And I'm trying to think of things that happened in 1910, 11, 12. The British, in 1910, the British miners struck for an 8-hour day. They were working 10, 12, 15 hours in the mines. And they revolted and they said they wanted an 8-hour working day. In 1910, Angel Island was opened in New York City. That became Ellis Island, through which a lot of the immigrants came, and they were examined and taken through Ellis Island so that they could go to New York and other parts of the United States. The U.S. Congress in 1910 gave President Teddy Roosevelt pension of $10,000. Up to then, no president of the United States had been given a pension. They left office and they had to work for a living. I just found some of these interesting. Japan, the Japanese army invaded Korea in 1910. Eventually they occupied it and ruled it for 35 years. Barnum and Bailey went into, that's a circus. They went into San Francisco in 1910 and they had 22 tents. They took up 8 acres. Things were very different. People didn't go to the movies. Charlie Chaplin in 1910. Do you know who Charlie Chaplin is?
Yes.
Yeah. He came to New York in 1910 as a young actor looking for work. He was well known in England. But we're thinking 1910. We're thinking 1912. What was the country like? What was the world like? Not the country, the world. China's Manchu house had a World's Fair in 1910. Rama V died in 1910. He lived in the teak house. Have you seen the teak house? I've seen it. I love it. Have you seen it, the teak house?
Yes.
It's in Bangkok, and it's where you should go see it. It's where Rama V lived.
Yes.
And it is so beautiful. It's out a little bit, but I can find out. You should go. You'll love it. Because in America, the house that Teddy Roosevelt lived in is near where I live. So it's a half-an-hour drive. And when you walk in, you know that a family lived there. The same is true of the teak house. It's so big and palatial and magnificent and beautiful. Top of the quality, top of everything. Beautiful carvings on the staircase, beautiful porches, gorgeous gardens. But when you walk in, you definitely know that a family, a happy family, an alive family lived there. So it's very welcoming, and you get that same sense. So Rama V died in 1910. There was a horrible, horrible, horrible fire in New York. It's called the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. This is how horrible life was for some of these people. The shirtwaist, the girls who sewed on the sewing machines, they made shirtwaist dresses, which were dresses that the working women wore. There weren't many working women, or the higher class ladies wore. And they had collars and buttons and a little blouse and skirts. The owners of the shirtwaist factory had all these young girls packed into these atrocious conditions, very crowded. And what they did, they locked the doors, they locked the windows, and those girls, those young women, were captive. And what happened in 1910 was a fire started. And they were on the 10th floor. They were high up, maybe the 8th floor, I can't remember. They couldn't get out. And people on the bottom, on the sidewalks, could tell there was a fire because smoke was coming out. Finally, they broke the windows, and the fire was surging. They tried unlocking the doors to the steps and they couldn't get out. So what they did was they broke the windows, they stood on the ledge, and some of them started jumping out. It was very similar to 9/11 when we saw those horrendous shots of people way up. They were flames coming, and rather than being burnt, they jumped. These girls jumped to their death, and there were people and there were policemen looking, and they were horrified. Because of that, Al Smith, who was a politician in New York, said, you know what, you can't do this to people anymore. You can't treat human beings like cattle. You have to have regular work times, regular honest fees, wages, and don't lock people in labor horrors. The other thing that happened in 1910 was the United Supreme Court took big business. It was Standard Oil. And they were big money. The Astors, the Rockefellers. And they said, you know, you're too big. You can't have this big corporation where only you take care of the oil. Does that sound familiar? What's happening today? Big corporations have a lot of power. And the little people, not little people, just there's people do not have the influence that the big money has. That's why I was very happy Obama was elected. Because he was running for health care for everybody. He was running for Social Security for everybody. He was running for assistance for students to go to college. Whereas the other people running were for big business, were for corporations. So there's a lot that is similar to that time.
What about Romney?
What about Romney? He lied, as far as I can see. He was never consistent. He never gave us his tax returns. He gave us 1 year's tax return. And his wife said, well, you're just going to be mean to us if we give you our tax returns. He had a business, the Blaine Company, that bought businesses and supposedly enhanced them, but I am not a fan of Romney. He laid people off to make money. He has money in the Cayman Islands. He's got millions and millions of money in a retirement fund. He's more than a millionaire. He's got, and then he was against FEMA, a federal agency that helps states and cities, like New York. I live in New York. We had a big storm, Sandy.
Yes, indeed.
My sister Ann and I were supposed to see my sister in Ohio. We left early. The storm was due on Thursday, Wednesday, or Tuesday. We left Sunday before the storm hit. When we got to Cincinnati, when we got to Ohio, I emailed my children, and everything in Manhattan below 39th Street had no power. Do you know Margaret, who teaches here?
Yes.
Her apartment had no electricity and no heat. So my son could not go to work because the subways were filled with salt water. But he lived in Park Slope, he lived in Brooklyn, he had electricity. But the whole thing is still not right. They're rationing gasoline in New York. They don't have enough gas. You know what it is? It's the pumps. You need electricity to pump the gas into the car. And when the electricity is off, the pumps are off. So it's a huge